Now, in just the last 48 hours, 800 Syrian refugees have crossed into Jordan. This follows the announcement by the Turkish Prime Minister Recep Erdogan that the country has received 1 million Syrians. Many, however, are still trapped, displaced in the war-torn country, not able to overcome the bureaucratic or the simple hurdles of security that impede their leaving. This is the story of a British Syrian man, Wael Zain, who is out but is trying to get his family out as well. A pretty dreadful situation, as he's been explaining to Newsday's Nuala McGovern.
I've lived all my life in the UK. I came here when I was one with my parents, originally Syrian, outskirts of Dera, near the Jordanian border. I got married in 2007 to a Syrian national, and Muadh was born in 2008. We separated in beginning of 2010. And subsequently, she travelled back to Syria with Muadh because he was too young at that time. He was about 2 years old.
So Muadh was born here?
Yeah, he was born in Birmingham. Yeah, she returned to her family with the intention of coming back when he's near enough school age. She went with Muadh a few months before the crisis broke out in Syria. She had an indefinite leave to remain in the UK.
So perhaps if you had remained married, she would have then become naturalised.
Yeah, but she was entitled to stay in the UK until August 2011. But when the crisis broke out in Syria, March 2011, they were stuck in Syria. But over the last 6 months, it's become really, really dangerous where they are. Only last month, 43 people got killed by a barrel bomb. He's been traumatised by the scenes. He's seen dead bodies, mutilated bodies. That's when I really tried to get someone from the government speaking to me, or the immigration or the foreign office. I mean, recently I actually wrote to William Hague directly. I reached a point where I couldn't get in contact with anybody. No one was returning my
And you want your son to come here?
I want my son to come here, but because he's young, it'll be quite difficult to separate him from his mother, especially after what he's been through, trauma-wise, and I'm not prepared to traumatise him further by separating from his mother. That's if he was to accept to be separated, because he doesn't know me that well. The last time I saw him, he was 2 years old.
Have you got any response?
I called the UK border agency to start off with. They referred me to the British Embassy in Amman. I tried to contact someone there, but I think they had some employees who kept putting the phone down. So eventually I got fed up and I managed to find the consula's email address. His name is Phil Ellis from the British Embassy in Amman. I wrote to him complaining about what's happened, and he actually got back in touch with me by phone. It was about a 30-minute phone call, and I was actually quite surprised about what he's saying. He was quite dismissive in the sense that whether she can come back or not. What he said was, at the moment, any Syrian under any circumstances applying for a British visa will be very unlikely to be accepted.
What does your son tell you when you speak to him?
I could hear it in his voice that he's really traumatised. I've even been to his local GP in Birmingham, showed him a picture of his eye, because when there was a barrel bombing in the village, his right eye is like inverted into his nose. So I think it's to do with, well, the doctors explained to me that he needs a surgical procedure because of one of the muscles must have
been damaged.
Yeah, damaged.
And your ex-wife, what does she tell you?
Every day that goes by, they're in danger.
How long have you been trying to bring them home?
For the last 6 months.
And how do you feel now?
I feel let down, to be honest with you. I really didn't believe that the government would just abandon any sort of British citizen abroad who's seeking help.
When you spoke to the consulate in Amman, what did they suggest that you do?
He said you need to speak to an immigration lawyer in the UK.
And William Hague, what was the advice from his office?
His office was they don't get involved in sort of personal visa application matters. Apologetic, but...
Even if it's a British national that's abroad?
Yeah, I've explained everything. I mean, I've explained that his life's in danger and I really need help.
Do you have other family in Syria?
Yeah, the whole family is in Syria, apart from my parents who are in the UK.
What are they doing?
Displaced. Some are in Jordan. Well, most of them are in Syria. Many of them have been killed. My son's favourite uncle, he was killed in a recent attack. And he actually witnessed that, so...
In Dera?
Yeah, well, outskirts of Dera.
Do you have a relationship with him?
It's been quite difficult over the last few years because when they went back to Syria, I actually went to visit him. That was January 2011, 2 months before the crisis broke out. And I was actually detained for 2 days interrogation. If any Syrians are listening, they will tell you it's a normal occurrence for any Syrian who's been away from his country for some time to be interrogated, being accused of being sent over by Israel as a spy. Or the last time I saw him was January 2011.
Wael, Zain, and a very sad story, one of the millions of the sad stories there. Wael trying to get his son and his family out of Syria. Well, we contacted the Foreign and Commonwealth Office and we were told that they couldn't find any traces of this case, but we are still trying for a reaction to Wael's case. So keep listening to Newsday. We'll get you that when we get it.
And just think of that. I mean, from that story, one thing that struck me is the fact that he goes to his doctor, his GP, his general practitioner in Birmingham, with a picture of his son with the injuries. And it just kind of shows how it's not just about Syria and it travels far beyond its borders. A doctor in the centre of England being asked to give advice on injury inflicted on a child.
You do remember we were speaking to these doctors here who were conducting operations via Skype.
No, it's quite extraordinary. We'll bring you more, as Shaima was saying, as we get it on the case of Wael Zain.